There's no doubt about it. Board director interviews are very unique, and it was reinforced to me the other day because I was talking to a client who'd just been through a recruitment process and had unfortunately not succeeded in securing the position. And he was totally caught off guard by the recruitment process because when he went in for the interview, he assumed he would be able to talk about his experience and put, his value proposition on the table, and the conversation went totally in a different direction. Okay, so it was very informal, it was very conversational, and they talked about certain matters that were of interest to the board, but because this individual had prepared in a certain way, suddenly found himself caught off guard and didn't feel like he landed his key points to get across the table. And keep in mind that often these recruitment processes aren't that sophisticated. Often the board handles it themselves. They don't always bring in external, executive search consultants to manage the process for them. And so as a result, you often have 2 or 3 people who are on the nomination committee interviewing you, and the questions can be a bit fast and loose. And so as an executive coming into this process, you regardless of what you get asked, somehow you have to land what is your unique value proposition. You have to somehow get this across the table. Now, you have to answer the questions you're being asked, but you've got to somehow weave into the conversation where you would add value so that you can spark some interest, you can spark a further dialogue about that. And so you have to be able to get across, how you're going to keep, what's keeping the board awake at night. Now, I went for a recruitment process myself the other day, very relaxed, 2 people on the Zoom call. They were asking a couple of questions. There was no formal structure to the questions. And, it was very casual demeanor and not particularly hard hitting, and no one asked anything really of any real substance, to be frank, of me. And so I realised after I'd answered a few of these questions that I was going to have to take a little bit of control if I was going to land on my key points. So I explained to this client that I had done a mystery shop of the organisation, and I immediately got their interest. And I said, look, I had made a donation to the organisation, and I was surprised that I didn't get a thank you and an acknowledgement, and there were some problems with that donor experience. And I talked about another experience I had with a different organisation and how that was different and made me feel more engaged. And so we suddenly started talking about that process. We started talking about, well, why was, this organisation falling behind? What were the technical problems? What was going on behind the scenes? And one of the people wasn't aware there was a problem. So in a very polite way, I highlighted a major problem with the organisation. I demonstrated that I'd done my research. I demonstrated where I could add value to the organisation. And so sometimes in these recruitment processes, you've got to gauge where you might take control over the conversation, where you might put forward the information. You may not be asked the cut and dry question of, well, what is your value proposition? What do you bring to the boardroom? Why do you think you're a great candidate? They might not ask that. I'd be fabulous if they did, but the problem is often they don't. And so these are very challenging recruitment processes that you have to prepare for. And it's absolutely imperative that you prepare. You cannot get through these interviews flying by the seat of your pants. They might be flying by the seat of their pants by being very relaxed and ad hoc, and a question here, a question there. There's no structure to the questions. That's fine. That's their prerogative. But you as the candidate coming into the process, you want the job. And so if you want the job, you've really got to be able to nail this value proposition and leave the board, really interested in taking a conversation further, or being convinced that you bring the right skill set and experience to the table. Don't let them die wondering. Make sure you put that key information on the table during the board recruitment processes.